I want to start today with my own little safety moment, a bit of a personal story for you. As I was preparing the other day for this, I was reviewing my deck, and I looked at the grammar I used here, the stuff happens. Really what I should have said was stuff can happen, because quite honestly, we can prevent stuff from happening. But I want to tell you a story this morning about a personal story for me, something that happened when I was a child, that happened to me. And, long before the days of, stop and think and terminology like last-minute risk assessments had, ever crossed my mind. So like I'm sure a lot of people here today, I grew up in a home with a dad who was a home improvement guy, a do-it-yourselfer. And the picture on the screen is a garage he built in the mid-'80s, probably his biggest ever project that he did. So I was, at the time, getting into my teens, and I was his chief gopher and helper on that project. And picture of him up there on his ladder, his homemade ladder. Let's not get into a conversation about his PPE and what he's wearing, or isn't wearing, I should say. But anyway, the red arrow points to a door on the side of the garage, a door opening. And on top of being a do-it-yourselfer, my dad was also, or still is for that matter, a pretty thrifty guy. And it's kind of ironic as I think about it, because he spent his career in maintenance. He worked for a local school board, and he maintained schools for the school board. And this summer he was building this garage. One of the schools, they were changing out a bunch of doors, and they had these solid wood, heavy solid wood doors, and they were changing them out with insulated metal doors. So being thrifty, he thought, I'm going to bring one of those doors home. I bet you it might just fit right into this garage here, save me from having to buy a door. So he brings this door home from the school, and I guess it was Saturday, we put this door up against the opening. It was a little bit too big. It didn't quite fit. So we're having a conversation about what we're going to do about this door. Can we cut the door down? We can't really make the opening bigger. Can we use it or not? We're having this conversation just as my mom pulls up. So my mom comes in. So my mom, my dad, and myself are standing there talking, and I'm facing them. My back is to this door that's standing there in that opening, and as we're chatting, a little gust of wind and that door falls. And the door caught me right on the crown of the back of my head, and it knocked me forward. I don't think I was unconscious, but it knocked me down. The door lands on top of me, and a little bit of trickle of blood starts coming down the back of my head. And so off we go to emergency, and they shave off a little bit of hair on the back of my head, put some tape on me, and take me back up, And a few weeks later, back at school, the hair's starting to grow back, the tape's long since gone, and everything's fine. And here I am today, standing on my own 2 feet up in front of you. But as an adult now, you think back to it, right? And you think about the luck of it all, right? Because what would have happened if I was standing 2-3 inches further away from that door and it came down, instead of catching me right on the crown of my head, but it caught me on my spine, right? Like right here on my neck. And I think about that, I often do, right? And that's where the luck comes into it. So again, the message here today is that, safety and events can happen. They can happen to smart people. They certainly can happen to good people. They happen to people who certainly don't, by fault, take safety for granted, but they can happen. And it did happen to me one time. So I found these photos and, just kind of looking back, right? And these guys in the days weren't doing anything wrong. I don't know who these guys are. It doesn't really matter who they are. I'm sure they all got home safely that day. But it's just kind of a look back at what things looked like, a number of years ago. And, it doesn't look that way anymore. And, I'm certainly thankful for that, and I think we all should be. This is just, a glimpse of the norm. And how the norm has changed and how the expectations have changed. Operational excellence. So I'll throw some Suncor terminology at you. Operational excellence is vital at Suncor, how we manage our business and what we do. It's also critical in delivering our mission. Our mission, if those of you haven't been on our website, our mission is creating energy for a better world. So I think about that. What is a better world? You know what? I define a better world as far as everybody getting home safely every night really is a better world. So when I think about operational excellence in our world, the graphic may be a little bit misleading. The intention here is not to say that we're balancing safety against other things. The little red guy up here representing safety, he's up front for a reason. Safety is first. Safety is above all else. We do it safely or we don't do it. But operational excellence at Suncor, operational excellence in maintenance, or the group that I lead, with the participation of many folks here in the room today. Operational excellence is that balance between managing our cost, managing the reliability of our equipment, our assets out there, while keeping safety out in front of everything else. That is, by all rights, operational excellence. If we can do that, and as Scott was saying, 60,000 work orders every year. That's 60,000 opportunities to make a decision between how to balance cost and the downtime of our equipment while keeping that focus on safety. So the risks aren't getting any less. The risks aren't getting any lower out there. You know, just a few photos, current photos of some of the things we got going on, whether it's craning a tank across a busy intersection in downtown Toronto, you know, whether it's confined space into a tank to do a repair. There's all kinds of things going on, and the risks are still there. I'm going to share some information with you around, you know, I'll show you some graphs in a little bit that kind of show to how we're doing and the progress we're making from a safety standpoint. The point here, though, is that the risks aren't getting any lower. I'll show you that the trending would indicate that we are progressing, but there's still a lot more to do. So the challenge for us all when it comes to personal safety is, how are we going to do? How are we going to get innovative? How are we going to get creative? How are we going to drive to improvement, you know, to achieve this journey to zero injuries in the workplace? How are we going to achieve that? And the only way to do that is being more creative, being more innovative, finding new ways, driving complacency out of the workplace. So a graph here for you, and this is a graph that shows recordable injury frequency. So first of all, for anyone wondering recordable injury frequency and what that means versus absolute number of recordable injuries that we experience, recordable injury frequency is number of injuries per 200,000 work hours. So it's more of a percentage than it is an absolute number. A couple of things about this slide that I want to share with you. Recordable injury frequency is the line above. So this is total number of recordables, whether they be minor, major, in essence, whatever they are, that's total recordable injury frequency in Suncor's business. And this is a graph 2004 to 2014. What I like about that graph is that trend, going in a very good direction, literally down by 50% over 10 years. Great to see. 2014 at Suncor was an extremely challenging year for us, a very concerning year for us. In Northern Alberta, in our oil sands operations, we actually lost 5 people, contractors and employees, in 2014. So our business, our senior executive of our business began to look at that and said, how can we ever possibly rationalize how we could have lost 5 people, or 5 people could have lost their lives in our operations in 1 year? We've got to take a look at this. Are we doing the right things? Are we doing what we should be doing? Are we looking at the opportunities for serious injuries that could lead to potential death or serious injuries, life-altering injuries for people? What's interesting about this graph is the line across the bottom is lost time injury frequency. And lost time injuries by nature are going to be more significant than all recordable injuries. So these are the more significant ones where someone didn't return to work the next day because of the injuries that they sustained. What's interesting about that line across the bottom is how flat it is. So the focus at Suncor has begun to shift. And as I said at the beginning, this kind of shift by a couple of degrees to how we're looking at things at Suncor, this shift towards a more in-depth look at more significant injuries. So I'm going to flip to the next slide. I'm going to start talking to you about serious injury and fatality potential and how we've introduced that in our business. So serious injury and fatality prevention initiative was launched a couple of years ago in 2015 at Suncor. It's intended to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries to people in the workplace. The goal really is to bring visibility to SIF exposures and allow the organization to understand and then address the precursors to those events. So obviously a fatality is a work-related fatal injury. A serious injury can either be a life-threatening injury or it could be a life-altering injury to an individual. And then a SIF potential can be either an actual event or it can be a near-miss event. So it could be a recordable injury. Someone who's actually injured can be at what we define as a SIF potential event, that person could have been injured a lot worse than they were. They were just lucky it was a minor injury. Or it could be just a near-miss. They weren't injured at all, but man, they were lucky because if things had worked out a little bit differently, there could have been a serious injury to somebody. So this slide is just intended to show how we make a decision on whether an event that occurs, an incident that occurs, is a SIF potential event or not. And the first question up here is, did the event involve the breakdown of a procedure related to a life-saving rule. So hold on to life-saving rule. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to talk to you about Suncor's life-saving rules. But if the answer to that question is yes, well, that's a SIF potential event in our business. If the answer to that, if the practice or behavior continued, it would result in a consequence of a serious injury or fatality. Again, if the answer to that question is yes, we'd consider that a SIF potential event. If the answer to that is no, it's not a SIF potential. It could be a near miss, could be a recordable injury, but it's not a SIF-P event. We wouldn't investigate it as one. So life-saving rules. In January of 2017, Suncor launched a new set of life-saving rules. These probably don't seem out of the ordinary to most of you here today because our peers, Shell, Imperial Oil, have been using this set of life-saving rules for some time now. These come from the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers. So we've aligned to our peers in the industry as far as our life-saving rules. What we've done, however, is the IOGP I think has 12 life-saving rules. What we've done is we've looked at the 12 and we've chosen 6 that we believe to be the most compelling for us, the ones that directly link to the historic events that we've seen in our business. So those 6 are, number 1, obtain authorization before entering a confined space. Number 2, protect yourself against a fall when working from heights. Number 3, obtain authorization before overriding or disabling safety critical equipment. Number 4, verify isolation before work begins and use the specific protecting equipment. Number 5, work with a valid work permit when required. And number 6, no alcohol or drugs while working or driving. So now we look at these and we think, well, kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it, to POST and what we do here with, with POST. Whether the critical checklists, the expectations of POST and the requirements of POST. So I kind of threw this together here to look at the alignment. Obtain authorization before entering a confined space. Well, we do have a confined space critical checklist. Protect yourself against the fall from heights. Well, we have a working from heights critical checklist. Obtain authorization before overriding or disabling safety critical equipment. We have an integrity of critical control systems critical checklist. Verify isolation before work begins. Well, we have our LOTO critical checklist. Work with a valid permit when required, and we have our safe work permits. Direct alignment. No alcohol or drugs while working or driving. Lot of conversation right now around alcohol and drugs going on and what's going to happen come July. I don't know that anybody has figured it out yet. We were just having a chat at this table about where the world's going as far as the legalization of marijuana that's coming. This isn't about legalization of marijuana. This isn't about consumption of marijuana or consumption of alcohol. This is about arriving at work fit for duty. And we all have a responsibility to not only ourselves, but to the people that we work with, that we show up for work fit for duty. And that is one of Suncor's life-saving rules. So again, alignment to POST. Quite honestly, as I look at this, I think to myself, well, I'm feeling pretty good because knowing that all the contractors, service providers, the folks out there supporting our business, working for our business, keeping us operating reliably, are abiding by POST, and so long as they are, I should have no concerns at all about any breach of one of Suncor's life-saving rules. We shouldn't be ever having to really deal with a SIF potential event in our business if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and living by behavior-based safety and POST. So just really quickly back to this again. This is Suncor-wide, so this is the entire business, upstream, downstream, refining, this business, the Petro-Canada retail business, this is everything. If I compare that to the business that I work in, this is the Petro-Canada retail and wholesale business that many of you here in the room support for us. Some good news and some bad news about this graph. Right off the bat, I purposely set the vertical scale the same to show the difference. The good news is these, both the recordable injury frequency and the lost time injury frequency are low. So that's good news. We're not seeing as many people get injured. Some may argue about the relative risk to our upstream oil sands and mine operations versus the work being done in the business that I support, potentially, but really like the fact that from a scale standpoint, we're seeing both lines well below. The other good news I would say about this is that both lines are visibly trending in a good direction, in that over time we've been trending down. I'd say the not so good news about this that concerns me, and I come back again to being innovative, being creative, and what are we going to think of next, and what's the next step? How do we get better? How do we, and we all have to do that together. The not so good part of this is the fact that the lines are still pretty flat. So if we were to extend those out, looking at these trend lines, we've got a long journey ahead of us before we ever achieve zero injuries in the workplace. So we've got our work to do, because ideally what we'd like to do is do more so we could steepen those slopes down and get to that, get to that zero mark even sooner. So again, I honestly, wholeheartedly credit the metrics that I show up here on the screen, that speak for how we're performing from a personal safety standpoint in our business, and I credit that to our partnership with Post, with all of the Post members, the contractors, and our peers in the industry as well. It is a partnership. Post is a community. It's a community that's led by the contractors, that's sponsored by the customers. It truly is. It is a best-in-class organization devoted towards safe work. When I compare it to anything I've seen out there in the general commercial construction and maintenance business, I've seen nothing that compares to what's been done here from a Post standpoint, the commitment made by the Post members, and it certainly, as we see it, we see the benefit in our business, and our sincere thanks to the members and the folks here involved with it for what we've been able to achieve. If I ask anything of you today, I'd say don't be that kid with his back to the door, not aware of his environment. We have to be aware. We always, we have to continue to stop and think. And I know you'll all do that. Continue to make safety a culture in each of your businesses. It is our culture. It is our number one priority at Suncor, and make it yours as well. My commitment to each and every one of you from a Suncor perspective is having all of you do that. You'll continue to see Suncor in partnership with Post for the foreseeable future. It's certainly our intent, and we're in this with all of you for the long haul. So I want to thank you all. Have a really good rest of the day. Maybe see you out on the Car Wax show. And stay safe, everyone. Thanks.